Lap pace, Toprak focusing more on his race pace, BlueSky trying to find that ultimate speed. So everyone working in different ways as well coming into the weekend.
Yes, indeed. The title battle will heat up over the final 4 rounds of the year. Nicolo Bulliga has got to win races. That's the thing it comes down to. He's 26 points down on Toprak Razgatlioglu coming into this final third of the season, beginning here at Manicura. A little bit misty in the early hours of the morning, but the sun has burnt off the clouds. Now we are in for a red hot day here in central France. Toprak looking to protect his lead at the circuit where he had that awful accident last year. It certainly hasn't affected him though, right back on the pace this time around.
Yeah, Toprak obviously looking very comfortable out there on track, and those first couple of laps through the Lycée complex, obviously it was understandable that he was a little bit hesitant through there, but straight away down to good lap time, straight away feeling good with the bike. Speaking to the team, they've said that they can see a little bit more patience with Razgatlioglu this weekend, but overall he's been just working like normal.
So him showing us there, it is a little bit cold here at Manicure. The sun may have burnt the mist off early this morning, but it certainly hasn't warmed up yet. So track temperature is going to be probably about half of what we saw in yesterday's 2 sessions in the early laps of this free practice 3. Nicolo Bulliga knows he has to win races over the next few meetings. He's got to get wins in a row at circuits, we said yesterday, where he wouldn't normally be a winner. He knows he's got to really up his game.
Yeah, it was interesting to see Bulliga yesterday. He looked a little bit stressed at times during the session, and obviously we're able to set his fast time at the end of the session where he actually broke the lap record, so faster than the fastest pole time we've seen here. So it shows that the bike is working well, but still chasing a little bit more grip, he said afterwards. And obviously for Bulliga, he knows that he's up against it here with Razgatlioglu so strong in Magny-Cours.
Well, he's certainly not up against it on the single lap pace. The quickest time of 1:35.428, 4/10 of a second quicker than anyone else. It was very close in the times behind him yesterday, with the top 8 covered by less than a second. One man who was very impressive, especially in long runs early in the sessions, was Sam Lowes, the leading independent so far this weekend. The Mark VDS Racing team working very well indeed over the early part of this weekend.
Yeah, we saw from Sam yesterday, very comfortable out on the track and able to do a good long run, 15 laps, and pace looked nice and consistent. Another racetrack where he's gone to that last year's data probably hasn't really helped him too much, but he's been able to come in and be very comfortable on the Mark VDS bike, and he seems very confident coming into today's running as well, of another strong performance in race 1.
But of course, the biggest story breaking during the summer break is that the greatest world superbike rider of all time, 6 times world champion Jonathan Rea, is to call time on his full-time career at the end of the 2025 season. He hasn't had the best of times, to say the least, on the Yamaha over the last couple of years, and has decided possibly not to call time completely on his racing career. We'll wait and see, but the greatest career of all is coming to an end.
Yeah, it's obviously for Johnny, it's one of those moments that's been coming for a while, but we've now got that confirmation, and he can go out and enjoy these final 4 rounds, the full-time rider. I think that we'll probably see him back on track at some point. That's why he was quite keen to stress that it's not a full retirement for him, but obviously we won't see him back out for a full season. But it's been a great career for Johnny the last couple of years. Obviously they've been pretty tough for him, but we'll forget about that pretty quickly whenever he calls it a day.
We saw Alvaro Bautista in his pit box there. Another breaking news story over the last few weeks. Bautista will be leaving the factory Aruba Ducati team and moving to the Barney Spark Racing team. He'll still be on a Ducati, so should still be competitive in the next season to come.
Yeah, and for Barney it makes sense. He's definitely an upgrade over Petrucci, just on the basis of the wins, the championships and the success that he's had. And if you're going to lose Danilo Petrucci to BMW, he's the best guy that you can put onto that bike to replace him. For Ducati it works out quite well. They were able to keep Bautista on one of their bikes for next year. The new 2026 machine is going to be a strong package, and then they're able to put Iker Lecuona into their factory team to replace Bautista. So best of both worlds for Ducati as a factory.
Yes, Iker Lecuona, of course, not here this weekend, still suffering with those arm injuries from the previous round. So Sergio Garcia comes in on the number 10 for the factory Honda team.
Yeah, bumped into Tom Jojic, the crew chief for Sergio Garcia, on the way out of the circuit yesterday, and he's pretty pleased with Sergio's potential on that bike. Obviously yesterday was a tough day. They had some problems at the start of the day that cost him a lot of running, but for Garcia it's about trying to build yourself up. The rumour around the paddock is that Iker Lecuona is going to sit out another few rounds, could well sit out the rest of the season. So for Garcia, a brand new circuit like Magny-Cours to have to learn, and a new bike and package to understand. So he's going to have probably another couple of rounds to be able to build himself up on that bike.
See his teammate Xavi Vierge, number 97, on screen on the Honda at the moment. News from the paddock is that a new fuel flow rate concession coming into Honda, but no certainty on what's going to happen with Xavi Vierge for next season yet. Quite a few rumours around his seat as well.
Yeah, I had a quick chat with Xavi this morning, the breakfast in the hotel, and Xavi's a good rider. He's a very solid rider. He's been Honda's top rider in the class over the last few years, but for Honda, it remains to be seen whether or not he's going to have a ride with them next season. And certainly, when you look at, you can see a slow-moving Alvaro Bautista in the background there at turn 5, just as Iannone and Bulega were coming out of it. But for Vierge, Honda have kind of intimated that they don't want him to make a decision for next year. They're keeping him a little bit on the hook, and Jake Dixon, he's signed, hasn't been confirmed, hasn't been announced, but everyone in the paddock seems to know that that deal's happened, and that was why Bautista was slow. Technical issue there for Alvaro.
Problems for the Ducati, quite a rare sight, so we'll wait and see if we can get news on what has happened there. They'll have that fixed for Superpole in a couple of hours' time, of course. But we mentioned Xavi Vierge's seat there, not confirmed for next year either. A couple of riders you've heard rumoured. Somket Chansra from MotoGP. We know he's struggled there, the rider from Thailand. He's been rumoured in conjunction with a Honda seat as well. Yeah,
the big thing is Honda, obviously, after a year of Chantra in MotoGP, they're moving on from him, and they'll try and look after him. And Chantra has had a good Moto2 career, 2-time race winner in the class, so he's been able to have some good results, and could well be the rider that comes in for Xavi Vierge. Is he going to be able to come in and do that much of a better job than Vierge's done? Maybe, maybe not. And I think that's where Xavi will probably be a little bit aggrieved if he loses out in his seat to a rider like Chantra. But overall, Chantra's also had a better Grand Prix career than Xavi Vierge, so it's a strange situation for Honda to be in. Jake Dixon comes in. Dixon will in all likelihood be the team leader for Honda next year, but again, he's another rider with a lot of Moto2 experience, and his Superbike experience comes from BSB at very different racetracks and very different bikes without the electronics package to learn and understand. So it'll be an uphill task for Honda. One of those situations where we still, 6 years into that project, don't really know where Honda's at, and if they change both riders again, we still won't really know either.
Mentioning BMW as you were a moment ago, it's going to be all change there next year. You mentioned Danilo Petrucci is joining BMW in place of Toprak Razgatlioglu as he moves to the MotoGP paddock. Petrucci with very big shoes to fill indeed, but we heard earlier this weekend that was actually Toprak who recommended Danilo Petrucci for the seat at BMW.
Yeah, and obviously for BMW they said that they were looking at Petrucci from the outset. When you look at the championship standings, the top 2 were confirmed to be under contract for next year. So you looked at third in the championship, and it's Danilo Petrucci. He's had a really strong, consistent year, and obviously for BMW, you can go and look to him and bring in Petrucci, bring in a MotoGP race winner, a Superbike race winner as well, and a lot of experience. So a good replacement to come in for Toprak. It's going to be interesting to see what happens within BMW for next year as well. Obviously, Michael van der Mark leaving for Pastures New next season, but what happens with the crew chief? Marcus Eschenberger with van der Mark and Phil Marin with Toprak. Will either of them stay on, and will they work with Petrucci, and what's going to happen there? So it's going to be one of those things where we get to the Jerez test after the final rounds of the year and we see how things play out. And certainly if you've got Danilo Petrucci and he ends up working with Phil Marin, you'd have a bit of confidence that they'd be able to get that package working quite well.
Danilo Petrucci just coming through to complete a lap, really throwing the Barney Ducati around there. He crosses the line. Michael van der Mark, incidentally, has just gone quickest in the times. You just mentioned that he will be staying within the BMW family. It was announced on Thursday, but not within the World Superbike paddock. Some rumours he may go and race in the United States, but no confirmation yet as to who is coming in to replace van der Mark next season.
No, not yet, and the big talk is Miguel Oliveira could well be the rider taking that, and over at the Catalan Grand Prix this weekend, Oliveira has been asked about that, and certainly a week ago he seemed to be quite reticent about the prospect of coming to race in World Superbikes. Now he's a little bit more open to it, and a lot of that will come down to the fact that the options to be a test rider for different manufacturers seem like they're a little bit less on the table than he would have expected. But if Oliveira comes here, and it's himself and Petrucci as 2 MotoGP race winners at BMW, that's a great step for that project, and an important step for them as well.
Several minutes into this free practice 3. Nicolo Bulliger across the line. He goes to the top of the times, a 1:36.8. That's about 1.4 seconds down on his pace from yesterday. But things will quicken up as the track heats up. As you say, track temperature is about 50% of what we were seeing yesterday. The sun has not yet warmed up the tarmac. We are going to see a pretty warm afternoon here as the day progresses, though. And Bulliger is quickest. Bautista, of course, still back in the pits, but he has rejoined. So whatever that technical problem was appears to have been rectified by the factory Ducati team, as Razgat Lioglu now goes to the top of the times on the BMW. Another rider who was struggling a little yesterday, I noticed, during FP1 and 2 was Andrea Iannone on the Go 11 machine. Talking to his crew, he said that they just couldn't get the front end setup right. Iannone was just not happy with the setup at all. Yeah,
just for Bautista, he's actually on his way back to the pits, just on the back of the truck. So that's still a lot of time lost in this session for him. But for Iannone, he had problems yesterday. And unfortunately for Andrea, that's been the story of the season. It's been a really tough campaign for the number 29.
Here's Alex Lowe's on the 22. He goes up to P3 in the times at the moment. Has had some very strong runs for the Bimotor team in the last couple of rounds. His results improving all the time since a rather chaotic Donington Park round a few weeks ago. But Bimotor getting better all the time, and some strong feedback from the test at Aragon recently as well.
Yeah, Bimotor, one of the big problems for them is just trying to find a little bit more top speed and being able to make some improvements for that for the team and the manufacturer. But overall, for their first year on the project, considering it was so new and so different to what they had been running at Kawasaki, it's been a very promising campaign, and they've been able to have some good results. And certainly when you look at the high water marks for both Lowe's and for Bassani, it's been impressive. Lowe's could very easily have been able to challenge for a race win at Donington before that big crash down the Craner Curve, so that shows a lot of potential in that bike.
Yeah, such a disappointment for Alex Lowe's back at Donington. He's desperate for podiums at the very least here this weekend. Sam Lowe's now goes to the top of the times. The times will tumble as the track heats up during this session. Andrea Locatelli we see here on the Yamaha, all sorted for next year, done deal. Trying to lay his teammate behind him, but no announcement confirmed as to who will replace the greatest of all time at Yamaha for next season. A few names have been rumoured, including Chan On-Chu, the World Supersport rider. He's been testing with Yamaha this year.
Yeah, it's not just a rumour. When you put him out to do a test at Cremona, you're able to see exactly where he stacks up, and he was 0.6 of a second apparently off the pace that would have been expected of him. So immediately down to good speed on the Yamaha. And On-Chu's one of those riders that probably is worth taking a bit of a punt on, because he's into his 6th year in the Supersport class, so he's got lots of experience there. Obviously still a little bit raw in some ways, just this year we've been able to see those few mistakes by him, but for On-Chu, if he were to spend another year in the Supersport class, might mean that he's able to win a world championship. But is he going to be that much of a better rider if he does another year there? I think it's worth taking a chance on him if you're Yamaha and he's your 4th rider out there next season, that you can try and do something with him. Obviously Manzi confirmed to step up to the GRT squad alongside Remy Gardner, but certainly if you put On-Chu onto the 2nd Crescent bike, you'd be pretty excited about their lineup.
Yes, Stefano Manzi coming up to replace Dominic Egerter in the GRT Yamaha squad, but no news on what Dominic Egerter is doing next year. We've not heard his name linked with any rides in the Superbike World Championship as Michael van der Mark comes through. Yeah,
the only ride that he's really been linked to is the Go 11 bike, but you have to take money to that, and at this stage of his career, Domi with 2 Supersport World Championships and a Moto E World Championship, is he going to want to bring that money to a team? And I think that's one of the big stumbling blocks for him. You wouldn't be too surprised to see him move back to Supersport. Could well be where he's on the MV Augusta next year, and we'll see where that leads for him. Certainly for Yamaha, they've kind of looked at it and said that they don't foresee him being on a Supersport bike, but for them, but could well be where he's on the MV.
Alvaro Bautista back in his pit box as the Ducati team try to diagnose the problem there. So we've just gone past half distance in this free practice 3. Nicolo Bulliger is quickest with a 1:36.144. That's still a few tenths of a second off yesterday. 7/10 of a second off his best time from the end of FP2 yesterday. Sam Lowe's 2nd and Danilo Petrucci 3rd in the times, as we watch Axel Bassani on the 47. Again, an up and down season, we should say, for Axel Bassani, the 2nd of the Bimotor machines.
Yeah, for Bassani, we've obviously seen some strong performances this season. And if you think back to Misano and qualifying on the front row of the grid, ultimately he only had a handful of points from that weekend to show for it after a couple of retirements at the start of the weekend. He also qualified well at Assen on the second row of the grid. They're the two moments we saw this year, that real potential for him. But the second half of the year has been a little bit tougher. He needs to regroup now for these final 4 rounds.
Sergio Garcia comes over the line, the replacement for Iker Lecuona. It's a new bike for him, a new circuit. He's in at the deep end this weekend, but he's performed well so far, I think.
Yeah, for Garcia, he's been able to come in, and it's been a tough weekend. Lost a lot of running in yesterday's session and in the morning, but still able to put in a lot of laps in the afternoon, and not too far behind on mileage overall this weekend. But certainly for Garcia, it's not an easy weekend to come into, and he's been able to show just kind of what you'd expect. He's 2.5 seconds off the pace on the combined time, so by the time we get to Super Pole, he'll want to be a bit closer than that. Then we'll get to Aragon, and if he's still on the bike, he'll certainly expect that at Aragon he'll be able to know a little bit more about what to expect from the bike, the package, and most importantly, the track as well. This is a brand new place for him.
7.5 minutes of this FP3 session still to go as we see Nicolo Bulliga really throwing the Ducati around through the final sector. I think he's going to come in. He is indeed this time. Still quickest in the times by 0.3 of a second over Sam Lowes, with the Toprak currently down in 6th position in the times. Times, of course, not that important in this session, but it's important for Bulliga to try and get that psychological advantage ahead of Superpole by showing that he's the quickest here so far this weekend.
Yeah, we haven't seen a one-lap time attack from Toprak yet. At the end of yesterday's session, he still went out on used tyres, so it'll be in the Superpole session, in all likelihood, where we see that from Razgatlioglu, and that's whenever he'll really lay it down on the line for him. But for Bulliga, he's got the 1-lap speed yesterday compared to everyone else, but you do still think Toprak's got an edge on him here at this track. Toprak just actually halfway through his latest lap on course for a personal best in this session.
Yes, he could move up into the top 3 in the times here. So everybody out on track except for Bautista has set a representative lap so far in this session with those bike problems for the Ducati. Hopefully they'll get that issue resolved and he'll be back out fairly shortly. But quite a lot of riders currently in pits, just making adjustments ahead of their final runs in this session with just over 6 minutes to go in FP3. And Razgatlioglu, well, he doesn't just go top 3, he goes quickest with a 1:36.051.
Yeah, for Toprak, that's still about 0.2 of a second off of his fastest time of the weekend so far. You can see Phil Marin there, his crew chief, just working on and just keeping track of what's happening there for Razgatlioglu. Had a quick chat to Phil yesterday just about Toprak coming back to Maggie Corr and the challenges facing the team, and obviously he's had a lot of success here in the past, but there was that memory of what happened last year, and that first session in particular, just a little bit more patient through that end of the lap, and it hasn't impacted his speed. And a lot of times for a rider, whenever you're able to take that small step back, it can actually just help make the bike feel a little bit easier through certain parts of the track. Because we can see here for Taz McKenzie as he comes down in towards the Lycée section, when you drop the bike through the fast left-hander at turn 14, it really is a fast section of the racetrack. You can run out of road very easily, particularly because you're right up at the top of the rev limit down into there, and the bike's trying to spin up.
Alvaro Bautista heading back out of the pits then, so we'll see if he's back on the pace as Taz McKenzie moves into the top 10 on the Bonovo Ducati. Been a relatively quiet second half of the season for them so far, but looking to improve with the British rider having moved on up from the MIE Honda squad. Razgatlioglu still on it out there now, starting to really improve his pace, and as you say, Steve, certainly didn't take him long to get over any possible demons from last year when he had that awful accident here at Manicourt that threatened to derail his season. It certainly didn't, though. He was able to bounce back after only missing a couple of rounds, keeping the number 1 on the BMW. He's just over half a second quicker than Bulliga so far. Yeah, we can see for Razgatlioglu now a 1/10 of a second off yesterday's pace from Bulliga, so he's put in that fresh tyre at the end of this session to be able to try and give himself something to learn before that Superpole session. But it's in the Superpole session that we really see everyone's real pace, and that's the session that matters. Certainly does. That's coming up in just a couple of hours' time here at Manicourt. We'll see the Tissot Superpole session. When the Egerter over the line, he improves to P10. So Razgatlioglu currently just under 0.6 of a second quicker than Bulliga, who's just rejoined. I suspect he will be on pressure tyres as well for this next one. Petrucci is back out on track as well. His teammate Jari Montella currently up into third place with a 1:36.298. The Barney Ducati certainly going well. Petrucci defending that third place in the championship this weekend as well. He has had a fantastic season on the Barney Ducati. Has got the Oglu and has lost that quickest time. Alex Lowe's has just gone quickest. Where did that come from on the Bimotor? An impressive lap from Lowe's, 1:35.502. So the time's starting to tumble. Locatelli now goes third, so I suspect everybody now putting the fresher tyres on for a final attack at the end of this session.
Yeah, just to give themselves that benchmark for the Super Bowl session. Just for Lowe's, it was a really strong end for the lap. Sector 3 and Sector 4 was fastest of all, and very strong pace in those sectors from him.
Jari Montella quickest of all in the first sector as well, so the time's really starting to tumble as they put in their final time attacks towards the end of this session.
Important for Yamaha here as well. Locatelli, Gardner and Jonathan Ray up there inside the top 6 as well. 3 Yamahas up there, so that's good here at the end of this session to be able to do that. What's been interesting to look at is Toprak on his second and third lap still able to set very fast lap times. We can see now for Jari Montella on his second lap on this set of tyres, still on course for a personal best, so still able to manage that tyre. One thing a lot of riders said after yesterday's running was they weren't too concerned about tyre wear, tyre life. It was going to be okay around this track, and we're seeing that even with the softer tyres trying to push on for the lap times.
Yes, Jonathan Ray up there in P6 at the moment. Possibly a little bit of the pressure has come off for him this weekend.
Yeah, good lap coming in here from Sam Lowe's as well, up by almost 0.2 of a second in Sector 1, so we'll see what he can do if he's going to be able to take the fastest time of the weekend so far. 35.4 is the unofficial lap record from Bulaga after that FP2 performance yesterday, so we'll see what his lap times can be as the lap wears on.
Bautista just trying to get a time on the board here after those technical problems earlier in the session. He won't be on the pace here, but we'll see him come across the line to start a flying lap.
Javi Vieira is actually on for a really good lap on the 97 Honda as well. He was strong yesterday and he was able to put in a couple of good performances, so we'll see what he's able to do now. He's a little bit further down the order than he'd like in this session, 17th fastest. Should be able to move himself up into top 6 or 7 positions, and I think that for Javi and for Honda, they've surprised themselves this weekend with their ultimate speed, and I think he'll be expecting that maybe he's going to give himself a chance to be able to fight it out for a front couple of rows of the grid in the Super Bowl session.
Vierge on for a big improvement on this lap. Razgat Lioglu lost a couple of tenths in the final sector. Just 1 minute of this FP3 session to go as Vierge does move up into the top 10. Jonathan Ray quickest by a few hundredths of a second in the first sector this time around. Alex Lowe's still there at the top of the times, but only just off by a few hundredths of a second the overall ultimate pace from yesterday. Nicolo Bulliger setting a 1:35.428 at the end of FP2. Garrett Gerloff on the Kawasaki on for an improvement. He goes into the top 10 as well. Been a relatively quiet season for Gerloff with the now lone Kawasaki on the World Superbike grid. He does go well here at the Manicourt circuits. Now here is Jonathan Ray. Let's see if he can improve. He's lost a couple of tenths in Sector 3 there, in behind his teammate Andrea Locatelli, as he has been for most of the session. See if Locatelli can improve as well. He's currently third in the times in this session, was third quickest overall yesterday, as well as Bautista comes across the line ahead of them, only improved slightly. Ray improves it only to P6, with Locatelli remaining in third. Razgat Lioglu just a few hundredths up in Sector 3. Let's see if the BMW man can go back to the top. The world champion comes over the line. He does go quickest, 1:35.497, only a few thousandths off the pace from yesterday.
Yeah, and for Razgat Lioglu, good lap to finish off the session. Just looking at it as well, Jonathan Ray put in another fast lap at the end of that session, so he consolidates his spot up there in 7th. Van der Mark with a good lap as well in the BMW. That's actually 8th fastest in this session, 10th fastest on the combined times. And on those combined times, it's interesting that Bulaga is the fastest rider that hasn't improved on his time from yesterday. Bulaga with the 6th fastest time in this session, but round about half a second slower than his times from yesterday. So maybe for Bulaga, didn't go out there with that fresh tyre at the end of the session. He might have used an extra one yesterday.
Yeah, so Nicolo Bulliger has to settle for a 1:36.03 today as Garrett Gerloff crosses the line, doesn't improve. So the majority of the field have now taken the checkered flag. Just Bautista and Jari Montella of the leading runners to come through and take the checkered flag. Bautista will be frustrated here to have his running limited ahead of Superpole later on. Jonathan Ray has pulled over, just getting notification after taking the checkered flag with the technical problems. So just got his final lap time in there. Let's see what Bautista can do. This is crew chief Julian Nava. As Bautista into the final chicane. Is he going to improve here? Across the line he comes, not by a huge margin, down in 18th place. He'll improve come Superpole though, no doubt. They're probably still ironing out those technical gremlins that cause him to stop on his outlap in this session. So it will be Razgat Lioglu who goes quickest, but still a few tenths of a second off the pace of Nicolo Bulliger from FP2 yesterday, as we see Jonathan Ray hitching a lift back to the paddock, the Yamaha having pulled up on his slowdown lap at the end of the session. So that concludes free practice 3 then. Everybody has now taken the checkered flag. The riders will be out just to do a few practice starts. And then we'll get ready for Superpole. It's very close at the top at the end of that session. Only 0.05 of a second in it between Razgat Lioglu and the impressive Alex Lowe's. He'll be pleased with his work there, certainly. Yeah,
and on the combined times for the weekend so far, only a tenth of a second between Bulliger, Razgat Lioglu and Alex as well. And then Locatelli, 4th fastest, Sam Lowe's 5th fastest. So good bit of variety at the front as well. But important for Bermuda to be able to show that turn of speed. Lowe's will be expecting in the Superpole session. He's always able to find something with that Q tyre that he should be able to give himself a chance to fight for those front couple of rows, because for the likes of Lowe's, that's the important thing. It's very difficult to come through the pack when you're not on that ultimate package like the likes of Razgat Lioglu or Bulliger. We've seen them have to fight through a few times this season, but certainly for Yamaha, for Bermuda, they'll know the importance of a good qualifying session, and that's when their riders are under the most pressure to make sure that they're able to find something. So certainly for Locatelli that we see here as well, he'll be hopeful that he's able to show something during the Superpole session. But it's great to see 4 different manufacturers up inside the top 4 in this session.
Yes, indeed. Bulliger on the Ducati quickest in the combined times, though, with his time from FP2 yesterday when he was on at lap record pace. Razgat Lioglu will go 2nd overall, but he is quickest in today's free practice 3, just 0.05 of a second ahead of Alex Lowe's. Locatelli on the Yamaha 3rd, Montella, the leading Ducati on the Barney machine, in 4th position. Sam Lowe's has to settle for 11th place in this session. Alvaro Bautista, after those technical problems, down in 18th place. In terms of the combined times from our 3 free practice session, it is Nicolo Bulliger who is quickest, ahead of Razgat Lioglu, with Lowe's in 3rd place, Locatelli in 4th. 4 different manufacturers in the top 4 places. Remy Gardner well up in 6th, ahead of Jonathan Ray. Bautista down in 14th. It's been a frustrating weekend for the former world champion so far. Two fairly short runs there for Toprak, his final time as he took the checkered flag, being the quickest of the session. Alex Lowe's preferring a slightly longer run early on, his best lap coming at the start of his second 3-lap sprint run. Slightly less laps for Locatelli on the Yamaha. Sam Lowe's quickest in the early part of the lap on the Mark VDS Ducati, getting the quickest first sector ahead of Montella and Locatelli. Toprak, who was quickest in sector 2. Alex Lowe's quickest in sector 3. In sector 4 on the Bimoto.